In this video, you'll learn the hands-down, simplest, easiest way to invest your money. You don't have to be afraid to invest, and I'm going to show you how to do it in 5 minutes. Yep, by the end of this video, you'll have your money working for you. Welcome to Money Med School, where doctors come to learn about money. Everybody's afraid to start investing. They're afraid they'll lose their money. They're afraid it's too complicated. They're afraid they don't understand it and they'll make a mistake. What they should be afraid of is letting their hard-earned cash waste away in a 0.0000001% interest bank account where it will lose value every day due to inflation. If you do not invest your money will lose value. That is an absolute guarantee because inflation. Ever so briefly, inflation. The value or purchasing power of a dollar decreases with time because the price of stuff increases with time. The increase in prices is called inflation. Inflation is why Grandpa could go to the movies for a nickel and you pay $20. The government literally calculates the cost of a basket of goods and services each month and comes up with a number called the Consumer Price Index. That's how much stuff costs this month. For some reason, this always makes me think of Little Red Riding Hood carrying her little basket of goods and services through the woods to Grandma's house. The big categories in the basket are food and beverages, housing, like rent, fuel oil, furniture, apparel, transportation, like new cars, airline fares, gasoline, and motor vehicle insurance, medical care, like prescription drugs, medical supplies, physician services, glasses, hospital services, recreation, like televisions, toys, pets, sports equipment, and admissions, education and communication, like college tuition, postage, telephone services, computer software, and accessories, and other goods and services, and this includes tobacco and smoking products, haircuts, and other personal services, and funeral expenses. On average, inflation is about 3% per year, sometimes more, sometimes less, but 3% is a number we usually use in calculations when we're adjusting for the effects of inflation. There's 2 areas where it's important to adjust for inflation. Number 1, calculating the overall lifetime return of the U.S. stock market, represented by the S&P 500 in this particular example. It's 11% before adjusting for inflation and 7% after adjusting for inflation. And number 2, calculating how much money you need to save for retirement, because $1 today won't buy as much as $1 in the future. So, now that I've guilt-shocked you into action, what do you do next? Because investing is super complicated, right? Geez Louise, no. What does investing mean? It means you use your money to purchase something called an asset that you think will increase in value over time, unlike your money will, and then in the future you sell that thing for a profit, or you borrow against it. Most commonly, we invest our money in the stock market. The asset is a stock, and we expect that it will increase in value over time, and then we'll sell it in the future for more than we paid for it, thus making a profit. Investing is how you put your money to work for you. The profit you make from an investment is called a return. So when you're thinking about how much profit you could make from an investment, you're thinking about return on investment, and this is expressed in a percentage. The return on investment is the gain of the investment, in other words, how much the value of that asset increased or how much money your investment earned, minus the cost of the investment, which is the amount of money that you invested, divided by the cost of the investment, again, the amount you invested. And that value is times 100, and that gives you the percent return on your investment. Here are some typical returns on investments. It's important to understand these are average historical returns. There is no guarantee that these will perform this way in the future, but in the past, this is how they behaved, and that's all we have to go on. So, a bank account. Down in the lower left hand, as you can see, the high yield savings account return is peanuts, or 0.5%. A bond, a little bit more, 3 to 5%. A total U.S. stock market index fund, ETF, or mutual fund, 7% when adjusted for inflation. A good real estate investment, about 10%. And cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, 120%. What these numbers mean is that if you invest $100 for 1 year, you'll gain 0.5% of that with a savings account, 5% of that with a bond, 7% with an index fund, 10% with real estate, and 120% with Bitcoin. In other words, a high yield savings account earns 50 cents over the course of a year. A bond will earn $5. An index fund will earn $7. A good real estate investment will earn $10, and a Bitcoin investment will earn $120. Okay, so obviously we invest in Bitcoin, right? I mean, why waste time dicking around with a stupid index fund for $7 when we can make $120? Well, because the more you stand to make, the more you stand to lose. Something that has no risk, like a bank account, charges you for that security by not giving you any return. An S&P 500, or total U.S. market index fund, has some risk. But historically, over its lifetime, the stock market has returned 7% on average, accounting for inflation. Could an index fund lose value? Yes, but it will likely make it back and then continue to grow. This graph is the performance of the S&P 500 over the past 90 years. You can see the major crashes. Here we have the 1929 crash, the October 19th, 1987 Black Monday crash right here, the early 2000s dot-com crash, and the most recent 2008 housing sitch crash. Despite all of these, the average return continued to increase over time. Now the risk here is all in the timing. If you have time to wait for your investments to recover, you're good. But if you needed your money right after one of those crashes, then you'd have a big loss. That's why you have to invest more heavily in stocks when you're young and less heavily in stocks the closer you get to retirement when you need your money. Real estate is pretty solid with pretty good returns, which makes it a beautiful thing, in addition to its tax benefits. It has its risks, but these are usually pretty acceptable. And now this brings me to a Bitcoin. Bitcoin is volatile AF, which means the value goes up and down like a ping pong ball. It goes up over time just like the stock market, but with larger, faster daily swings, and it is considered more risky. One day your return could be 120%, and the next day it could be 70%. But 70% is still a pretty fucking awesome return if you ask me. So, back to the simple-ass, basic, easy as pie investment that you can set up in 3 easy steps that I promised you in the beginning. Refer back to the part where I said a total U.S. stock market index fund, ETF, or mutual fund returns 7%. That's it. Simple as pie. With one ETF, you can own every stock traded on the U.S. stock markets. You have total U.S. stock diversification. And if you pick a low expense fund, you're saving money. So it's 3 steps. 1, open a brokerage account. 2, put money in the account. 3, purchase U.S. stock market index fund. Let's break it down. A stock is a small piece of one company, and a fund is a collection of multiple different stocks. There are 2 common types of funds, and these are exchange-traded funds and mutual funds. Exchange-traded funds are also called ETFs, and mutual funds are similar. The main difference between these 2 is that ETFs are traded all day on the stock market exchanges, just like individual stocks, and mutual funds can only be bought or sold once a day in the evening. Also, mutual funds tend to have slightly higher fees. 2 reasons we buy funds. One is diversification. Your risk is not tied to any one stock's performance. It's spread out amongst many stocks. And 2, you can get more stocks for a smaller investment because you're getting small fractions of these stocks instead of buying whole shares of each stock. A stock market index is also a collection of stocks, but this collection or sample of stocks is used as a measuring tool for the performance of other stocks, and it itself is not traded on the stock market. An index is like a stock ruler. You compare other stocks to it, and you see how they measure up to the index. It's easiest to explain by example. All right, so the S&P 500 is a stock market index. It contains the stocks of the 500 largest U.S. companies. The S&P 500 index is the stock ruler that's most commonly used to gauge the health or performance of the whole entire U.S. stock market. That's why you'll hear about it on the news all the time. Or it's sometimes used as a gauge of the overall U.S. economy. So there's many different indices. It just depends on what you want to track. Indices are just collections of different stocks that represent a particular category, like a particular sized company or a particular sector of the economy. For example, if you want to track small companies, you'll use the Russell 200 index. If you want to track tech stocks, you'll use the NASDAQ 100, which is a collection of the top 100 companies on the NASDAQ exchange, excluding financial companies. These tend to be tech stocks, but they're not all tech stocks. If you wanted to know how well a particular sector of the economy is performing, you could look at an index that tracked stocks in that sector. For example, a transportation index, like the Dow Jones Transportation Average Index. And this is a collection of stocks of companies in the transportation industry. Now, stay with me. Okay, we're going back to funds. A fund, which again is a collection of stocks, can contain any stocks that the creator of the fund wants to include. And some funds contain the same exact stocks as any one of the stock indices. So the fund behaves just like the index. It tracks the index. For example, an S&P 500 index fund contains the same stocks as the S&P 500 index itself. As a result, an S&P 500 index fund performance mirrors the performance of the S&P 500 index. This is called tracking an index. We say the index fund tracks the performance of the index itself. The S&P 500 is commonly used as a proxy, like I said, for the whole U.S. stock market. However, there are actually about 3,000 stocks traded on the major U.S. stock markets, which are the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. If you bought an S&P 500 index fund, you would be invested in the 500 largest United States companies. But you would not be invested in every company traded on the U.S. stock exchanges. If you would like to invest in every stock that's traded on the U.S. stock markets, then you'd want to buy a fund that tracks the performance of a U.S. total market index. For example, the CRSP U.S. Total Market Index is total U.S. stock diversification in one fund. Ta-da! Done! You can get a mutual fund that tracks this index, or you can get an ETF that tracks this index. Personally, I prefer ETFs for the lower fees, but it's not a huge deal. You can do a mutual fund as well. Now, the most famous U.S. total stock market mutual fund is Vanguard's VTSAX, that's its ticker symbol, or Vanguard's ETF, which is their ETF of the same index, and that ticker symbol is VTI. Both of these track the total U.S. stock market, so you can expect, quote unquote, expect an average return over the lifetime of the fund to be about 7% after inflation. Again, this is not investment advice. This is just for informational and educational purposes. not investment advice. So, the simplest way to invest your money is to purchase a total U.S. stock market index ETF or mutual fund. You get diversification across all U.S. stocks. And the one with the lowest fees that I have found is the Vanguard, ticker symbol VTI. That's the ETF. So here's how you do it. Step 1, open a brokerage account. Step 2, put your money in the account. Step 3, purchase as many shares of VTI or VTSAX or whatever version you find that you want to buy as possible with your cash. Extra credit bonus, set up an automatic monthly deposit into your brokerage account and automatic purchases of the ETF or mutual fund that you choose. Where do you open a brokerage account? A brokerage account is a bank account that gives you access to the stock market to buy and sell stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs, and some of them also let you sell options, buy and trade options. There's about 3,500 brokerages in the United States, but these are some of the biggest ones. I have no relationship with any of these personally, but these are some of the biggest U.S. brokerages. They are very comparable. All of them have zero trade commissions. So TD Ameritrade, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, and E-Trade. By the way, TD Ameritrade and Charles Schwab, or for those of you in the know, you call him Chuck Schwab. So TDA and Chuck Schwab have merged, and they're going to be making some changes within the next year. Right now, they're still functioning as separate brokerages. All right, let's show you an example of how easy it is to get started making your money work for you. All right, so I just picked E-Trade here. Go to etrade.com. This is one of the big US brokers, and it's like really, really hard. You just go to this big button right here on the home page, boom, open an account. And then it says choose account type. Okay, there's a 5-step process. Choose account type. You're going to hit brokerage account. Continue. Choose brokerage account type. You're going to hit individual account. Or if you're setting it up with a partner, you can hit joint account. Or if you're setting this up for your child, you can hit custodial account. I have another video about making custodial accounts for your children to save for college. You're going to hit continue. Are you an existing customer? No, you're a new customer. And then you're going to put your contact information in here. And then as you go through the application, it's going to ask you about your social security number, your personal information, and then some questions about how you want to use the account. And it'll probably ask you if you are a professional, like on Wall Street, because it has to ask you that. The FINRA regulations want to know. All right, and that's it. Boom. Then you link this thing to your checking account, put in your automatic monthly deposit, and set it to automatically purchase whatever ETF or mutual fund version of the U.S. Total Stock Market Index Fund that you want to buy. Bada bing, bada boom, now your money is earning money. On average, 7% annually. Currently it's more, some years it's less. So, ta-da! Don't be afraid, just do it. You'll be glad you did. The only guarantee is that if you don't invest, your money will lose value. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and go ahead and subscribe to the Money Med School YouTube channel. See you next time.